Hello and welcome everybody. Can you all see me okay? Good to see you all. I'm going to put you on gallery view. Gallery view, as I keep reminding my mum every time I Zoom her every night how to use. It's a great way. Great to see you all. And thank you very much for joining us again for this week's Dirty Salad Club, which is a place for all of us practitioners to get together and support each other. So it's practitioners supporting each other. And obviously we're all going to be in breakout rooms talking, because it is kind of lonely as coaches, we also have to adapt. So looking, how do we adapt remotely to coach better? That's what I'm going to really look at today. But again, like every week, it's about jumping in. It's about our conversation rather than just me talking at you. But really the focus of this week is the new normal about coaching at home. Is there a couple of techniques and tools we can learn from each other and share? And I'm going to bring you through some that I've been thinking of late. So let me share my screen with you. So that's what we said. The title is Bench Press, Get Better at Your Remote Coaching Muscle. So our purpose as a company is to transform how people experience work for the better. And that's important because you can't change other people, okay? And that's an interesting one, especially for all of us coaches and leaders. You're trying to influence people. We can change their experience a lot easier than we can change the actual thing that's is a barrier to them. And then for this session, I was thinking, well, what we're trying to do here is really transform how coaches experience remote sessions for the better. How can we enjoy it better? And we're probably learning a lot already, so we'll share what's working and certain things don't work, etc. Organizations, when I think back, what are we doing as coaches? Well, you know the way they say organizations aren't about communication, they are communication. Where similarly, organizations really, when you stand back from it, they complicate things a lot, it's just a bunch of talk. Now, why is that helpful to us to remember that? Well, remember this, is that we make it more useful. Okay, so that's what our jobs are, is to actually help the conversation to be more useful. It was Sigmund Freud who said words were originally magic. Well, they still are. And that's what we're doing in coaching, trying to help people to be more useful in the way they speak, which will give us a more deliberate outcome. Now, I love Pelita Clark. I don't know if you come across her. She writes kind of took over from Lucy Kellaway in the Financial Times, but she was doing an interesting piece at the weekend, in terms of a guide to modern manners in Zoom, which I thought was quite relevant to us as coaches or even in any meetings. But the first point she made was, don't be a broadband snob. Now, I was wondering what she meant by this, but what she really meant was some of us have faster broadband than others. And it's not anybody's fault. And we can't possibly do anything about it right now with the remote working. It is here to stay a bit longer. But her point being was, she's noticed on calls and that people who have faster broadband feel a bit superior to the other people that don't. And it can really damage people's engagement and performance. And I was thinking back and I said, that's really interesting. How does that help us in coaching? And where it is interesting in helping us in coaching is when somebody is struggling with their broadband. And it's horrible, especially if it's an anxious conversation you're having, asking them to repeat themselves. But and often you'll find, and I've noticed this since reading Pelita's article, is people are often apologizing. I just came off a call where people are apologizing for their bad broadband. So this is all about being more empathic, about deeper listening, as they say in Buddhism. So we're also, what I think we should be doing here, rather than being a broadband snob, is actually saying to people, it must be frustrating for you with the internet, even though it's their internet, and allowing that to be part of the conversation. So they can be frustrated, because I think the problem is they feel they can't be frustrated because it's their internet. Don't be a background braggart. And what that means is if you have a super duper Apple, great, but actually work to the person you're with. The other point she was making was upperware does not equal anywhere. What you're saying, still turn up to, in our world, our coaching conversations like you would, at least from the upperware. And lastly, she said, ignore the occasional child or cat, what I think we'll be doing. In fact, we're enjoying that because it's a snapshot into people's soul. And then what she says there was, invite carefully. Sometimes it is kind to be ruthless. And what she meant by that was there's some people that really dominate Zoom meetings. And she could maybe consider not inviting them. In the coaching world, maybe consider referring your client on. So let's have a look at this. It's all about breaking with, okay, so EQ behavior. So how can we be more deliberate in ourselves and helping our clients? Well, when people are emotionally intelligent, they press pause, to allow themselves the space to respond deliberately. And that's what we're doing. I think we're separating the stimulus from response, and we know there's a space in the middle, and that's where we have the freedom to choose. This is outlined a lot in Viktor Frankl's work, which I'm about to talk to you about as well. In our world, how do we be more emotionally intelligent? If we're looking at the EQ framework, the most scientifically validated measurement of EQ, where would you focus on that? Well, really, what I've been looking at over the last couple of weeks with clients, it's all about the emotional expression, especially when doing all this virtual bit. Should I express myself more? Emotional expression is about how you show up. Emotional expression is understanding that your mood, especially if you're a leader, is a contagion, and you will greatly impact the performance of others, how you turn up. Jack Welch, love him or hate him, used to say, if you're a leader and you don't have a smile on your face by the time you get to reception, he said, give yourself a slap in the face, because the amount of people's performance you're impacting. And interesting, as a leader, people look to you for cues, and Zoom, we're getting less cues. And if my leader's stressed, I'm going to be stressed. So it's more important than ever to be more mindful of how you're emotionally expressing yourself. So, Billy Byrne discussed this with us a couple of weeks ago, being aware of the emotional expression and the classic 73%. Words only account for 7%. Even remembering this and sharing this with clients before they go in can make them get a much more engaging session with people they're connecting with. I came from couple counselling, and I used to love it when it was normally the fella, I hate to say, would say, all I said to her was, and then we'd share with them, well, actually, it's interesting, because potentially that's only 7% of what you've been communicating. And that's that can be quite an eye-opener and a good one. But again, it's been echoed through the Dirty Salad Club for the last few weeks, but the emotional expression is more important than ever. People don't necessarily remember what you talk about. They do remember how you make them feel. And this was outlined a lot. Gordon Brown talked about this, but it's actually in reaction to Tony Blair wrote in his autobiography. The problem with Gordon Brown is he lacks emotional intelligence. Now, we loved that because it put emotional intelligence on the map. They went running around, what is this? And Gordon Brown kind of wrote his own autobiography last year, and he said, you know what? In 2010, he didn't show enough emotional expression to win. He said he didn't connect. He just thought doing the right thing was good enough, rather than, in his day, control and command, that was good enough. But now, with communication, and especially in the virtual world, this emotion is more important than ever. So sharing, he said he didn't show enough emotion. He didn't express himself. Now, he does write in his chapter in the book, I didn't show enough emotional expression, but I wouldn't like to think that I'm not emotionally intelligent, even though he spent the whole chapter outlining very well how he wasn't. So poor old Gordon didn't show enough. And this is the purpose bit. This is the power of purpose, the why behind the what creates an emotional link to the job we've done. So when you're with clients now, we really need to be ramping up the emotional expression, but also explaining things, the why behind the what way more, not just taking it for granted and leaving people to work on it. Now, I was also thinking, it is a contagion. And how you're feeling will greatly impact how other people are feeling. How you're feeling going into a coaching session will greatly impact the session and the engagement. This is a great article in the Harvard Business Review by big positive psychologist Sean Aker. I took down I want to give you the reference first so you can have a look at it and share it with clients. But it says, and it's kind of linking it to the current age crisis, make yourself immune to secondhand stress. Now, this is a positive and a negative, because it's a contagion. So if it's not negative stress, you might necessarily want to. But there's the article there. But Peter Salovey, who this is a bit I took out of the article. He is one of the key authors in the Mesquite, where Billy Byrne is running certifications on shortly. But it's actually it's a quotient measurement of emotional intelligence. Peter Salovey, founder of the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, found that if you create a positive mindset about stress, so how you step into stress, how you view it, how you talk about it, and stop fighting it, you experience a 23% drop in the negative effects of it. And that's all backed up by research. It was really interesting. I was thinking, well, how does this impact us then? And how we engage? Well, you can think about it, little steps, what that looks like. Well, the next one, it says, most people start a Zoom session, or even when you meet them, how are you? I'm floored, I'm swamped, I'm busy, busy, busy. Well, it says, I'm swamped or I'm so busy. Instead, to be more emotionally intelligent when you're starting your coaching session or getting your leaders to do the same, it says, start with a breath. So reaffirm your purpose, what are you there to do? And calmly say, it's great to talk to you. And you will actually elicit and they'll mirror neurons and emotions. And that's a great way to start. Because if you're starting swamped and they're saying they're swamped, goes down a rabbit hole, and they're less likely to be creative and innovative about the solutions to the stressful situation. Okay, so let's get practical. We're coaches. How does this do it? Well, actually, online, which I've been playing around with, and I'd love to get your ideas, I actually say, well, show me. If emotional expression is very important, and you know a client lacks it, you have a measurement of it, you can view it. Well, I often say to them, look, show me how you turn up. Literally, show me now on the Zoom or Microsoft Teams, whatever the platform, or show me how you turn up. Most people haven't even thought about it, but that's a good thing. And even if they can't answer you on the spot, you're getting them to think, how do I show up? And we know the leader showing up greatly impacts the performance of everyone else in terms of being able to manage their mood. You know, remember the whole old English thing when they say you leave your emotions at the door, they don't have any place in the workplace. But not only can you not do that because they kind of come with you, but learning how to manage them effectively is your competitive advantage. So getting your leaders who might naturally be emotionally expressive to think of, well, how do I turn up? What are my rituals? What is my, before I turn up, how do I manage my emotions? And then ask them, here's another great coaching question. How would you notice you were using better emotional expression? Actually get them to physically show you. Share the fact that it's all about emotion. Share that it's sharing the why behind the what, not just what has to be done. And get them to share with you, how do I notice if they're using better emotional intelligence? Once they have a picture of that, they're much more likely to act in it the next session they're in. And then lastly, a lot of people with low emotional expression, the issue is they lack the vocabulary, emotional vocabulary. And that's why they score so low in emotional expression. So get them, literally get them to start using the emotion. Say, I feel anxious, I feel excited, I feel engaged, I feel whatever the emotion is, but identifying the emotion to the thing. And people remember how you talk to them, how you feel rather than what you're talking about. And people, if you're finding it difficult to identify the emotion, get them to even Google an emotional vocabulary and get them to circle emotions that work well for them. And the more they start to bring emotional vocabulary into their workplace, it will actually greatly impact them. That's a great way, actually say, show me. So now, what I want to look at today is a classic bench pressing your coaching muscle is to think big. This is a great reflection point for people, but they may have to reaffirm their purpose. Still thinking big, begin with the end in mind, as Stephen Covey would say, but with a little tweaking, and then act small. What are the deliberate small steps you can do each day? Every coaching session I'm on at the moment, I'm saying, think big, then act small. Think big, act small all the way. Well, how do you do that? That sounds great, and it's in all the research at Harvard Business Review. Well, let's have a look at how we might approach that. So when you're thinking about thinking big, it's all in relation to linking with the resilience now. Everything is about resilience and hardiness, because the hardiness mindset is actually a positive, it's a positive mindset when you approach stress. Just like Mary was talking about there, if you take a positive approach, it's not going to change what happens to you, but it's like giving yourself a shield towards stress. So there's challenge, control, and commitment. This has been looked at in previous ones. The challenge, the growth mindset, the control, kind of self-efficacy. But the commitment is around purpose. Like, why bother? What is it? How would this be useful to me? Now, there's a lot of work done on resilience over the years. Angela Duckworth did a load of research on grit. One fundamental problem that's been pointed out and research has found out about the grit work is it doesn't look at commitment. So it's all about challenge and control, but it's not about having purpose in it. So that's a big hole in the research which has been addressed in the Hardiness resilience gauge. So let's look at how would you bring that commitment conversation into the coaching room online. So commitment is being engaged in seeing all parts of your life as interesting and meaningful. Now, what happens when people get anxious and there's a pandemic and the world we're in, we're living, working much more virtually, that actually can start to actually, you only see things that aren't purposeful. You remember to a time and you kind of reminisce about how your life was and how it was more purposeful. This is a good time to do reflection points. Most people said if I had the time, I'd actually go and I would actually look at my purpose. So it's time with our clients potentially to reaffirm purpose. Now, how I do this would be to ask a coaching question. Yeah, I want to share with you. This is a great. I was listening to Sean Moncrief from the RT radio show, and he had a guy in who was a bin collector, but he was saying how his purpose and pride in going to work each day has boomed since the crisis begun. Listening to him was energetic, and it was wonderful because this is a guy who kind of felt invisible in his job. Because not only is he not invisible now, kids are writing appreciation letters on the bins. So it's actually, he reaffirms, it's the classic, are you building a wall one guy's just building a brick in a wall, the next guy's building a cathedral to honor God. But it is how you approach. So he's actually found himself being re-energized because of the purpose. And it's about constantly critiquing and doing that for ourselves. Back to Viktor Frankl, who I mentioned earlier, one of my favorite psychiatrists, wrote a book on Man's Search for Meaning, 1946, just after he got out of Auschwitz. He was a Jewish psychiatrist stuck in Auschwitz. Now, all of the research, even when the banking crisis happened, Harvard went back to Viktor Frankl's research showing if you could find some meaning, even in the horrors of a death camp, which he did, he was being experimented on, tortured, humiliated. But he noticed that anybody who slipped away or survived, it was actually down to a lot of it. Did you find and did you reaffirm a purpose? Now, no judgment that anybody who found no purpose in Auschwitz, but how do you actually align yourself? How do you think big? What is the bigger? How can I align my values with what's going on now? People talk about nutrition, looking after yourself, all very important, but we know that purpose and meaning, especially in our coaching conversations, that's where we're giving people the space. Whenever anybody does a bucket list, they're about to die, and they list all the things that they really want to do, they could bring those into their life in some shape or form. Now, we have this block. I can't do anything purposeful until everything is arranged. Well, it doesn't happen like that. So now is a good time to look at the purpose. So here's a great question that I would use, which would be, what would tell you that your coaching leadership for yourself was adapting as best as possible? What would, and that will get to the purpose and meaning. That will actually values. How would you know? What would tell you that your coaching leadership was adapting as best as possible? Now, for yourself, I'm thinking of the coaching, but if you're working with a leader and you want to stand back and ask them what we call in the solution-focused world the future perfect question. It's meaning, it's purpose, it's all the same space. Or Stephen Covey, who I'm a big fan of, used to say, begin with the end in mind. He'd say, at your 80th birthday, who would you like to see there? What would they be saying about you? It's getting people to think big. Because when you panic, you often do the opposite. You don't think of purpose, you think of what caused the issue. I often think back to the banking crisis here. When it happened, everybody was running around going, how big is it? Tell me about it. And they actually got paralyzed by the problem. Well, real leadership would have been about what are we going to do about it? Let's analyze it later on. But actually analyzing it in the moment that actually increased the problem. And then Obama came over, remember that, outside the gates of Trinity, and he said, Irish people, your best days are ahead of you. That was a purposeful, future perfect question. And then I think it was Tommy Tiernan who came in and said, great, what do we do in the meantime? So now he didn't necessarily leave us with a roadmap, but that's the act small bit, which we're going to get to. So it's not just about thinking big and wealthy, it's actually think big, go for the purpose, and then how can we notice progress towards that journey? So can I ask you, if you have any coaching questions you use around the future perfect that you could share, would you drop them into the chat box? And Julie will actually, who's going to help me out, will have a look at reading out which ones. But if you, as a coach, which ones have you found working well? Which ones has this triggered you potentially to want to use? And if you have one, just drop them into the chat box there, and we'll have a look at them, because I know I've been talking at you long enough. Let's see if any come up in the chat box. Okay. Anybody like to share one? Or if you feel free, take off your mic and please just share one. What would perfect look like? What do you want to become? Yeah. Thanks, Caroline. Anybody else? Well, I tell you what, I have a sneaky few that I've uploaded, which I'll share with you, so you don't have to do the work yourself. So I think one more is coming there. Let me just have a look at that one. Which was, how would you like to show up? What impact do you want? Brilliant. What is your internal driver and how does it show up in your day? Stephen, thank you. Okay, let me show you some future perfect. I'll go back, I'll share my screen again. So these are ones that would enable you, after you ask your client to answer all these future perfect questions, it's great to kind of get them to, look at your answers to the future perfect and then kind of collate a summary of a future perfect statement or a contribution statement, or Stephen Covey would say a personal mission statement. It's all the same thing, but it's getting outline, reaffirming your purpose. What would make this useful to you? Well, I have some in a book I wrote, and I've just copied out ones which you could tweak for today's environment, but it said, if time and expense weren't an issue, I would. And most people, especially Irish people, you ask them a question about these things, they go, I'll have won the lottery. Stock answer, if I meet you this time next year, things are going well for you. How would you know? Irish people obsessed with the lottery will say, I've won the lottery. But then when you ask them as a follow-up, what will you be doing differently once you've won the lottery? They list lots of things they can bring into their life now. But they have a base, we have a blocker about looking at the big picture stuff. So as coaches, we want to change the conversation to get people to think more meaningfully. And this is a great way to start. It says, if I truly wasn't afraid, I would. So what would you do? If I won the lottery, what I would be doing differently would be, that's getting at that, and we know that your base level of happiness will win the lottery, only stays for a year. Same with getting locked up in prison. All of this research shows most people aren't very good at identifying what makes them happy or when they're happiest. And it's about contentment and noticing progress, which I'll share with you in a second. What conversations will your friends and family be having at your funeral? What songs will they be singing that remind them of you? Okay. What will people be saying about you when you've arrived at your future perfect? How would they notice? What legacy do you want to leave? How would you like to be known? If you were the person your dog thinks you are, what would you be doing differently? We all love our dogs. Back to this one that I've adapted for the current environment. What would tell you that your coaching leadership was adapting as best as possible? Now, here is a future perfect challenge I set for clients once they've done, you ask them 1 or 2 future perfect questions. I asked them, here's your challenge. Identify an object between this session and the next session next week that represents the essence of your mission. And the mission is just essentially crystallizing the understanding of the answers from the previous questions. And have it as your background picture for our next session. It works really well. So you're having a client who is connecting with something that they find is their purpose in life, the most meaningful thing they can connect with, slightly reaffirmed potentially because of the current environment, and they have it as their backdrop. Now, again, to Polita's point in the Financial Times, if they don't have a virtual backdrop, even if they have it as a picture, they can physically hold it. But it's a wonderful thing. I did 90 minutes with somebody yesterday. We literally had their picture of what was a purpose to them, which was a member of the family, but we did the whole session with it in the background. And she referred to the picture a lot. So the purpose was the idea, her goals for the coaching conversation was to realign her purpose. And we had the whole session with her purpose as a picture. So it works really well in this format. So get people to share things. Don't think we can't do much. We can actually do a lot more in many ways. I didn't even think about that until I saw somebody doing it. So that's a great one. Get them to do a challenge and share it as a mission statement. Now, this is all great. Think big. But it's a bit back to, the point about Obama and being made was, okay, well, what do we do tomorrow? Because anybody who gets up in the morning has a good idea, can think big, strategy, what's the bigger picture stuff, but so few people follow through. And that's where we can help. And that's where we can add real value as coaches, helping them to act small. So a lot of this comes from, in our world, around decision-making in the emotional intelligence. You will see most people really struggle with decision-making, especially when they're feeling anxious. So you make wrong decisions, bad decisions. That's one of the ones. And actually what's interesting about this model, because there's millions and millions of people who've taken it, so they can do lots of number crunching. Younger people, millennials who get a hard time, often scores very confident, but actually scores quite low in decision-making. Which is interesting because you assume because of the confidence they'd be good at executing and managing emotions, making decisions, but they're not. The research shows on it. But equally, it's been, because of the pandemic, most people are struggling to act small and struggling to manage their emotions when making, and the reality testing is part of that. And that makes sense, and because the very impact of anxiety, that's what it does, taking out of our comfort zone, uncertainty, of course it impacts our decision making. So this is where we can add real value with our clients. So, to use a metaphor which I love from Stephen Covey, he talks about your big rocks. What are your big rocks in relation to your future perfect? So you get your client to work on what's purposeful, get them to do a future perfect mission statement, get them to have it as their backdrop. Okay, that's great. And now how would we know we're making meaningful progress towards that? Stephen Covey has it as the metaphor. You put your big rocks in relation to what you want in the bucket first, because normally they're an afterthought. We'll get to them eventually, and there's never any space for them. He says, put them in first. Bit of gravel will fall out, but so what? Because the age of information is over. It's the age of attention and focus. Nobody can stay focused on anything long enough to complete it. We're always jumping, and we think multitasking is a good thing, but it actually has us all over the place. So Stephen Covey's work is actually, okay, we'd have to slightly tweak it for the current environment, but it's as relevant because they're principles that work no matter what. Now, if you want to share this with yourself or with your clients, I've also got the video clip here from YouTube. I won't watch it now with you because we don't have time, but I wanted to when I was putting together the slides for this morning, I said I'd love to share that because it's one of the classic ones for Stephen Covey. He brings a lady up on stage and he does the exercise with the buckets. But it's a great one for your clients to have shared language when you're meeting them and you're holding them accountable. Okay, let's discuss our big rocks. What are your big rocks? Or what did you do to act on your big rocks this week? And that's the great thing about Covey. Nice little metaphors. Takes it away from the universities and makes it accessible. So as I said, I won't share it now. It's only about 4 minutes long, but you'll have the clip. It's up on YouTube. Watch it yourself. You've probably seen it before. And also, I email these video clips on and then ask your client, what do the buckets symbolize? What is the metaphor? What's an empty bucket? What would big rocks going in first look like for you? And then what we know is, most people don't notice progress. Change will always happen, but people don't notice the progress they're making towards change. And that's what we really want them to do, is to actually notice the difference they're making. And in our coaching world, you know it yourself, when you coach somebody and you have great sessions and you know they've achieved their goals of what they wanted within the coaching, but then you meet them maybe in 6 months' time and you ask them, how's everything going? And they go, oh, dreadful, I think I'm back at square one. But then when you go back to look at the list that they had, that they originally wanted to achieve in the coaching sessions with you, they're going, oh, I got them. I've achieved that, but they're just onto something else. People rarely notice progress. So that's, I suppose, our job, or how we can be helpful, is to help people notice progress. Share a spotlight on it. It's similar to Martin Seligman, the father of positive psychology. He came up with the idea of the appreciation journal, where each evening just jot down something that went well. Because something will go well, but you won't notice it. And whatever you feed yourself, whatever narrative, that's what you'll be focusing on. So we want to allow people to have the lens for noticing what's working. And this is the work of Teresa Amable, the Harvard business psychologist, who talks about the way to keep people engaged is to understand your future perfect and to make meaningful progress on your purpose. And that's what this is about. First of all, what is the purpose? And then how, and it could be adapted for the current environment. So I realize we'll have to reaffirm that. And then how do we notice that we're making meaningful progress towards it? And this is this is a great read by Bruce Springsteen. Because most autobiographies are kind of ghost written, or they're written as if, well, I had a plan all along and this is my purpose and I'm so talented it just worked out. That's not what happens, is the way people remember it potentially. But what's great about Bruce Springsteen's one, it's written very honestly, so it's more helpful. It's about his self-doubt, it's about his depression, it's about his lack of belief, imposter syndrome in the corporate world. You know, it's the same stuff, but he talks about the struggle, which is useful. But again, we link it a lot to being purposeful and acting small, because he talks about you can't, and this is the growth mindset. Carol Dweck was going over his autobiography, the Stanford psychologist, around growth mindset. But he said you can't just sit back once you know your purpose and think, I hope something will happen. You know, you have to hone your craft, go after the small steps, notice progress, and then you notice you start arriving to your purpose. Like you might often hear younger people go, I'm off to India to find myself, to know what my purpose is. It's unlikely that will happen. They have great fun, might get high, they might really enjoy themselves, but it's unlikely that it's going to be the purposeful kind of way we would do it in coaching. And that's what Bruce Springsteen talks about. But you keep going after the small steps, the small steps, the small steps. Okay, so how do we do this? How do we bring this into a coaching room? Well, in the solution-focused world, we use a technique called scaling. Now, you probably know scaling, but people use it in many different ways. And it's linked to kind of positive psychology, solution-focused. But where we have it here, a 10 would be your future perfect achieved with excellence. So everything you set out to achieve in your future perfect, you've nailed it. Now, what happens is, normally, if it's a problem-focused person, they use it as a marketing tool, or the Royal College of Surgeons, I know nurses will tell me they use it for pain, so you can't tell, you know, what kind of level of pain a child is in, so you get the scale. But they use it kind of in the reverse of the way we use it in coaching. So what they would use it in, if you said, I'm at a 3 out of 10 in terms of my future perfect, well, then they would say, okay, what has you down at a 3? And you'd be thinking, well, you know, I don't have the time, it sounds great, but I mean, I don't have the resources, I'm homeschooling, my job is uncertain. You know, even after this conversation, it's more likely I'm a 2. So you start talking yourself down and looking at the lack of resources and everything you can't do. Now, the same conversation and same tool can happen, but a slightly different question would be, okay, you're at a 3. Well, we know that nothing is ever starting really, are unlikely that you haven't tried or given it a go. So at 3, so we're looking for the highlights. We go, what has you up at a 3? How do you know you're up at a 3? And then people, their amygdalas go calm because they're looking at what they can do. They'll mention things like, I mean, I could connect in. I heard somebody at the Dirty Salad Club tried this with a client. The other thing is give myself a break about the broadband. So all of these things, you start looking at the resources and whatever their goal is, and then they start to amplify them. And that's what we want. We want them to get to notice progress. It's easy to notice what's broken. We're hardwired to notice what's broken. Leadership and resilience and influence is about what could be without potentially all the answers. So we're looking at that. So I'm at a 3, and then what happens is most people then, if they're at a 3, they think, oh, I'll put that on hold because I'm going to get an opportunity to get to 10. It's a bit like when you're doing coaching or training. I teach in the IMI and people go away and they go, really enjoyed that, but I'm very busy. I'll get to that at some stage. Now, a few months later, the leaders are looking up and they see those folders and they know they never went near them. And it kind of creates more anxiety because they know at the time I connected with that, but I never did anything with it. Now, what they're doing wrong is they're not looking to get to the next step up the scale. They're high achievers who want to get to the 10, which is putting too much pressure, doesn't happen, and then they blame psychology, me, or whatever. They simply taking on too much. You're much better with them. Okay, how would you know that you moved up 1 on the scale? And people can generally, identify a couple of things that they could do to move up 1. And rather than trying to get to the 10, major surgery, I just want to know a couple of small things you can move, how you move your big rocks during the week before we talk next week. And then it becomes like the tipping point, Malcolm Gladwell's work. You keep tipping, keep chipping in the small goals. Edmund Hillary had the same thing when he was climbing Everest with Tenzing. He said, if you look to the top, you'd implode, you give up. But you just focus on the next step, the next step, the next step. So and then, it becomes like a domino effect. They come back to you next week and they don't say I'm at a 4, I'm at a 5 or a 6, because they're noticing progress. Remember back to Teresa Amable, people are most engaged when they know what their future perfect is, they know the work they're doing is meaningful, and they notice progress on it. Now, small steps are really important, not big ones, especially when people are anxious and they've got a lot going on. So we're looking at trying to get them to highlight small steps all the time. And a small step, by the way, just for a definition, should be within your control, positively worded. So you want them to say what they want rather than don't want, and not reliant on somebody else changing or doing something first. So most people's small steps are often about other people doing something, but actually they're not the person we have in the coaching room. What are the small steps you can do? So always get down to the small stuff. And you can scale anything, by the way. You can scale if somebody comes on to you and they says, I'm feeling anxious. Don't just say think positively. That's irritating. Okay, well, let's scale your confidence. Where is it now? You might say I'm at a 2, I'm at a 1. What's working and how would you notice you've moved up 1? So when people feel stuck, especially in this environment, get them to scale. You can scale competence, you can scale confidence, you can scale anything. And it works really well virtually. And what I do, and actually I'll do it together now, if I can. Could I, I want to do that. I want to stop the share. Now, if I could ask you all to scale where 10 would be the question I asked you about the future perfect, is that you're adapting as a coach to the current environment so well, you're amazing. You can't get any better. 0 would be you're a complete disaster. Where would you scale yourself? So can I get a show of hands? Just put up your hands. So if you're at a 10 here, at a 5 here, 0 would be down. Where would you put yourselves? Show of hands. I'm in the gallery view, so I can see most people. Okay. Yeah. Oh, okay. Quite high. Middle. Up high. Okay. I'm taking notes here. Some of you are nailing it. Okay. Great. Now, what I want you to write down one thing in the chat room. What has you up there? Okay. So just jot down into the chat room how you're up there. Not why you're down there. What has you up there? One thing that has you up there. Just throw it into the chat room, please. How would you know you're 1 up? Or that you're where you scale yourself, not 1 up. Okay. As you're putting that in there, okay, being flexible, yeah. Preparation, control. Don't just turn up to the meetings, control, unprepared. Get yourself into the right mindset. Be prepared for your opening question. And they're going to start by going, it's dreadful, isn't it? Planning, looking for new approaches to practices. I'm going with the flow, really enjoying adapting. Good on you. Love that one. And that's how to take a positive approach to the same thing that's happening to you. That's that resilience bit. That's that commitment. Had a good session. Love IT and working from home. Okay, Susan, we'll definitely be contacting you. I know it's not rocket science. You can shine away from IT, but it's not a huge comfort anymore. We have not been afraid of technology yet. Yeah, I mean, it's idiot-proof now. I mean, the Apple stuff kind of works for you. Showing it can be done, taking time to create presence and getting comfortable with digital. So we're all saying the same thing, aren't we? And I suppose this has pushed us into an area that maybe we kind of knew, but we weren't touching. So we could actually expand our clients and portfolio based on it and enjoy it. You know, do the change in your background, use the tools. It's not a case you can't use the tools. Being able to change the overwhelmed feeling in a session to upbeat and positive, love it, Jacinta. Now, here is the next bit that we'd use if you're coaching somebody. And you can coach teams, by the way, on this online. Some of you put yourselves about here, middle. Well, I want you all to think about if you're one up, just one up on that scale, what would be different for you? What would you notice, okay? How would you know that you are slightly more comfortable in your adaptation to the new virtual world of coaching that we're all living in, and which won't be going away, you know, even after the 5-step plan. So we really want to get on top of this, which is great because we are getting on top of it. But everybody could just jot down one thing in the chat room. What would be different if you were just one step up on that scale? What would you notice, please? How would you know you've moved up one step? Greater sense of calm, yeah. And then if I was working with you, Stephen, I'd be going, okay, so give me a small step, greater sense of calm. What is it within your control? What can you do? How would you know? What are you going to do between now and we meet next week that will tell you you have that? More clients, Lucia, great. If you're up one, okay, yeah. And then, you know, getting better at this stuff will make you get more clients. More followers, more clients for me too, okay, so clients. Positive feedback from clients. Are you helping with sessions? And ask them, did you find it useful? Ask them to, here's another way to scale a session. You know, because you know, Irish people, it's a bit like when we go to a restaurant, you give out to your partner about the food, the minute the waiter comes, that's fine, yeah, thanks. So what you do is scale. At the end of a session, we do a session rating scale. I go, okay, 10 would be, you could say, I focus on all your goals. 10 could be, you know, you can make up anything, and you got exactly what you needed from this session, and get them to scale it. And they say an 8, how come you're up there? And then, okay, if the next session you scale it a 9, what will be different? And they'll give you the feedback that they want to be different in the next session. So, you know, scaling when people are stuck, but it's so powerful anyway, because it gets it down to those crunchy things we can do tomorrow, rather than this kind of abstract, I want greater influence, I want better. But what scale is small steps, always take small steps. I will be making the things I know I need to, rather than thinking, planning. Okay, thanks, Anik. Proactively around generating new ideas, and Susan, yeah. Greater marketing of the coaching offer, that's Caroline. Connie, and that's something, I mean, there's so many small steps you can do in all of this. Connie was, goal to be working online with groups. Yeah, and this is now, I've just started doing this with groups myself. I did a team coaching session last week. The breakout rooms are really powerful. Now, I didn't do them today, I was meant to. But they're really, really powerful, the breakout rooms, and you can go in to each of them and they can press help if they don't understand. So your group coaching, in many ways, it's a bit more impactful. Now, the reason I like Zoom is because everybody in a gallery view can view each other. If you're in some of the other ones, you're not. And what invariably happens then, if you can't see everyone, you become the teacher, so you're not really coaching, because you're doing all the talking. And you know yourself, I know I'm talking a lot now for the last 40 minutes, but if you're doing all the talking, you're not actually coaching. We'd actually say, well, then you might as well become the client. You know, so it's actually, our job is to be in the background. And I'd front that up, because if they expect you to do all the talking, that's what happens. So at the beginning of a team coaching session, go, look, my role is to be in the background and your conversations in the foreground. What I'm going to be using is breakout rooms and allowing you to speak, and allow for uncomfortable silence. Get them into it. If you do all the speaking at the beginning, I promise you'll end up doing the whole speaking throughout the whole lot. More group work, yeah, delivering on the groups, brilliant. Well, what I want to share with you now is, I'm going to put you back into it. And that's the other little technique, by the way, I learned, guys, is that have the conversation like we're having it here. Now, I know there's over 30 of us, so we're not quite, but normally a group will be, 6 to 16, so you can all see each other nicely. Don't keep the PowerPoint on when you're chatting away. because they'll just it's like having a telly in the corner of a pub. You know, you look at it even though you're not even interested. The same thing happens if you have the PowerPoint up. So take the PowerPoint down, have a chat, and it's only when you want to share a bit of content, put it up. Don't have it up all the time. Some of the sessions have been up recently or been on. We all just, and it's a bit like now, but I'm not trying to coach you. We all just look at the screen, but you need time to look at each other. Okay, so let me share with you the screen after saying not doing it. But we're doing it for a reason. Let me just share it with you. If there's any questions, please shout. I'm aware I've been doing a lot of talking. Share this one. Okay. Okay, so really what I want to do now is to recap, to have us off in time. We have a minute left. So the whole idea is to think big, reaffirm your purpose. If this went really well for you, how would you know? Most people enjoy that. They talk about reflection point, but this is the real one, guys. This is the glue. The glue is act small. And how we do that is, how do you notice progress? Scale is a great tool. You have other tools you use in your own box. But if you think about that mindset, it's just like think big, act small. That is really helpful for people to take a positive approach to uncertain times, stuff they can't control. Next week, we're in for a real treat. We have Stephen McDonald at Dirty Salad Clubber on the line now as well. And anybody, by the way, who else wants to facilitate one of these, please feel free to get in contact, etc. We don't have to do all the talking. I did a lot of that today. It's in breakout groups. It's really just get conversations going. But I want to read with you what Stephen's going to be doing. In this session, Stephen will be exploring language and the impact in neurochemical triggering and using that to consciously prime ourselves and clients for the development of resilient skills of high value as we move through this disruptive time. Thank you, Stephen. Really looking forward to that. So, guys, I'm going to allow you to sign off. I'll stay online if anybody wants to have a chat. But thank you all very much. And I think on time management, actually, a couple of minutes ago, my was a bit quick, but we'll end early unless anybody wants to have a chat. But as I said, feel free to stay online. I'll be here and we can catch up. So thank you all very much. And we'll see you next week for Stephen's Dirty Salad Club presentation. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.